Do you know what is going on in your real estate market? That is what we are talking about on today's episode of the Never Lose a Deal podcast. If you are new to this podcast, I am your host, Lorillia Brown-Phillips. And on this podcast, I talk about creative financing strategies that you, as the real estate investor, can use to be able to expand and scale your portfolio. And that is what I am talking about today. I want to talk about your local market. That's right. I want to know what is going on in your local market because guess what? I know what's going on in mine. The reason why I say I know what's going on in mine is because I recently came across an article early part of this month. As I film this, it is probably going to go out at the end of April. But rest assured, there was an article that came out about the real estate in the state of New Jersey. But before I share that with you, I am a big advocate of it. And unfortunately, in this time space reality, as I film this, you're either listening to it or you're either watching it visually. And unfortunate with the internet and social media, people have the tendency to compare. And when they compare, they don't get really a full understanding of what's going on within their um, own world. And I get it. There's some people that would argue that fact, but this is what I want to say. If you are a real estate investor, unfortunately, there are real estate investors who are currently doing deals, even with everything going on, the war, in other parts of the world, even with the uncertainty with the interest rate environment. Rest assured, and of course, lack of inventory, rest assured, there are real estate investors who are doing deals. One may ask, well, Lorillia, how is that possible? How is it possible that real estate investors are still doing deals, will continue to do deals, regardless of what's going on? And I say this, and I'm going to sound like a broken record, is because at the end of the day, and I did a whole episode on this, and I will make sure I include it either in the show notes or under the video if you're watching, and that has to do with knowing your buy box. Now, if you know your buy box and you know what works for you, um, you are buying. But rest assured, the article that I came across had to do with the New Jersey market. Now, you've seen the client results. If you are new to me, understand a lot of the clients that I work with are either they're outside of New Jersey. There are some who are in state, but some of them are outside of New Jersey. And although I don't know what's going on in Seattle, Washington, I don't know what's going on in Miami, Florida, I don't know what's going on in San Francisco, California. I lean on the experts, and those experts are lenders. Now, are there tools that I can use to gauge what's going on? Yes, but at the end of the day, in order for that client to get funded or that client to get finance, I am going to lend lean on the expertise of the lenders because they have better tools. They have data. They have been doing it for a long time. But with that being said, understand most of the lenders I work with are licensed in 48 states. The only two states are Alaska and one of the Dakotas. So with saying that, I don't try to be an expert in every market. So I am very clear on that. I cannot tell you to the penny what is going on in Dallas, Texas. I can't tell you to the penny what is going on in Nashville, Tennessee. But I do know the pulse of what's going on in New Jersey. And even though New Jersey is a very small state compared to other states, um the there are differences, but even with that I still know what's going on. And so my point with this podcast is know your market. There's too many people trying to be experts, trying to compare their expertise, what they're doing to other people in other markets, and that is why people have said, why are you so optimistic? Well, I'm optimistic because, one, I have data to pull from. It's not my first time at the rodeo. I didn't get started in real estate in 2020. Started in 2008. So I've been in some economic cycles. And so you've heard the story before. 2008, I got started. A lot of people was running away. I got started. Was the market topsy turvy? Everything had changed, but since that was all I got exposed to, and I was also working with people who had seen this before, I continued to move on, even in a worldwide pandemic. Still closing deals in real estate. And so now, even what's happening, a uncertain interest rate market, there are some people who are a little fearful, and I find that a lot of that fear does come from people who are new. And so this podcast is not geared for the new investor. It is geared for that investor who have did a few things, have did a few deals, and are now looking for some things outside of the scope when it comes to financing, on ways that they can improve their portfolio. And so, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up this article. And for my listening audience, I will read it out to you. But if you do have an interest to read it yourself, feel free to watch the video version of it. So, as you can see, my visual audience, New Jersey outpaces U.S. housing market, tops nation in price growth. That is why, ladies and gentlemen, when people say, "Oh, you're so optimistic with real estate, you must not really be doing anything because this is what's going on here." But you're so optimistic. But because I'm keeping a pulse on what's going on in my area. I'm not keeping a pulse on what's going on in Tampa, Florida. I'm just not. I will lean on the experts to do that. So, can I work with investors who are from other markets? Yes, but I'm going to lean on the expertise of the lenders who are in those markets because they have the tools. So, as you can see, the article goes on to say, while the rest of the country grapples with a stall housing market and high interest rates, New Jersey has emerged as the top leader in home price growth, driven by high wage jobs and Manhattan exodus. The state, well, where did I don't know, the darn thing jumped. Okay. The state is outpacing the national average and outperforming former COVID era hotspots like Florida. According to a recent report from Cotality, the Garden State isn't just growing, it is outpacing the field by a wide margin, with home prices climbing nearly 6% in February from the previous year. The US national average growth during the same period was just 0.5%. As I mentioned to you, if you want to read the article yourself, you can just do a Google search, because other online media sources have also shed light on that statistic. Do you know what's going on in your real estate market? Do you know what's going on in your real estate market? That's why I'm not keeping up with what other markets are doing. Am I aware? Do I have an idea? But I'm not keeping a pulse. And so, if you're that investor and your goal is to win, even with all the doom and gloom that is going on outside of the things that you can control, the one thing that you can control is knowing what is, one, What's your real estate buy box? I did a whole episode on that. I'll make sure I'll try to include it into the show notes. What's your real estate buy box? That is what you first want to start with. So you got to know what it is that you want to buy. If scaling and expanding your real estate portfolio is something that you want to do, what does that look like? I'm not talking about what it looks like from your coach, what it looks like from your guru, what it looks like for the expert that you're following online. What does it look like for you? Are you looking to add one property to your portfolio a year? Do you want to skip? What type of property do you want to scale into, or you want to buy more of? Maybe you don't want to scale, you just maybe want to keep expanding or growing what it is that you have. I've mentioned to you before, I have a client. She is a corporate professional. She has no interest in being a full-time investor. But what she is definitely bullish on, she's bullish on being able to grow her real estate portfolio. Why? Because she wants to make sure that when she is in her real estate, I mean in her retire years, that she has something besides her corporate pension and retirement. She wants something else. Clearly knows what her goals are. On top of knowing that goal, is looking to add on an investment property every year. She's not looking to go from I had three real estate properties, and I'm looking to, by the end of the year, scale that to 20. That's not what she's trying to do. She's trying to add to what it is that she has. And so she is now going from having single families that she owns. Now she wants to go into multis. I say that to say it gets to look different for every person. Stay very clear of the person who says, no, if you want to expand and you want to scale, it looks like this. A lot of times that's what people think. Oh, when I think of scale, I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna go from single family homes to now, owning 20 unit apartment buildings. If that's what it is, that if it looks like that for you, then that's different. But this is what I always say: on the financing side, understand the way you finance and get financing for a three family is going to be different than getting it for a 20 unit. And I can tell you right now, the one thing that really what a lot of people miss is they don't understand the financing piece. A lot of people use strategies and tactics that they did in one season or been able to acquire certain assets and think they can bridge those over to another strategy. And that is not how that works. I've talked a lot about on this podcast. I get it. You've house hacked. You have been able to build out a very good portfolio, but understand when you decide to go into investor financing, it looks different. And that is the biggest thing that stops a lot of people because they don't know that. They still are thinking from that standpoint, buying a house and getting a mortgage. And that's not this world. If you're looking to, and on this podcast, when I talk about creative financing, I've said this in last week's episode, creative financing looks different for everyone. It's not just sub twos, it's not just lease options or insert whatever real estate strategy that you want to do. It looks different. And so when I talk about it, I'm talking from the standpoint of financing. Maybe it includes, some seller financing, maybe it includes some private capital, maybe it includes getting some type of investment loan. Maybe it includes getting some business funding. Maybe it even includes being able to use a few of those things. Maybe it will even, maybe we'll even include SBA financing. Like I said, it gets to look different. So there's not one way to skin a cat, and at least that's not how I work with clients. So I say this to say, um, deals are still cooking here in New Jersey. So, we are still looking at deals, and I've said this on other podcast episodes. I do source a lot of deals myself. I got a whole marketing system that I have used for many years. It still works. When it gets to the point that the KPIs don't work, then that's when I'll stop using it. But clearly it works. It's nothing fancy, but it works and it gets deals. And a lot of times, even when I share with people, um, they're not going to stay consistent enough to even to put it in place. But it works. If you want deals, the system works. But I say this to say, um, next month, in the month of May, I will be hosting a webinar, and you'll see it scrolling if you're watching the video portion. But for those who are listening, it is going to be a live webinar to create a financing webinar, and it's going to be about a lot of the principles that I talk about here on the podcast, how you can apply them to expand your real estate portfolio. And so rest assured, that is what that live webinar is about. You can go to www.neverloseadeal.com to learn more about the live webinar. Sign up. And what I do want to say, it is not a webinar to tell you where to go get financing. I think that you have Google, you have AI, you have the different AI platforms, Chat GPT, Claude, whatever it is. So finding lenders is not what this is about. So, but I can do a whole nother podcast on that whole mindset construct where people feel like that a um, there is a lack of lenders. There's not. There's plenty of lenders, and if you look on that website at www.neverloseadeal.com, clearly I said there are $1 trillion in capital. And I don't say that to be salacious. That is a fact that I actually have, that I definitely share when I do that webinar on statistical data. This is not something that I just pulled out of the air. The statistical data based on a source that you could either look up yourself. So there's trillions of dollars in capital. And so that is my goal, to work with, show, help investors who are looking to tap into that capital, put a plan in place so they can build out their real estate portfolio. If you want to learn more, you can go to www.neverloseadeal.com to learn more about that live webinar. And as well as if you want to just learn more about me, if you're new to me, everything will be below this video, or if you are listening to the audio, it will be in the show notes. So once again, this is Lorillia, and I will see you in the next episode.